Ahoy, you salty sailors. Time to raise anchor and set sail for your best scrawny life. Arr.
So here we are once again in a forest where the small trees and the understory trees have all been cleared and the large oak trees have been left standing, either in a misguided attempt to restore the oak savanna or just simply to open up some airspace around the large oak trees to prevent uh, fungal diseases from killing them, like oak wilt and so forth. Uh, it's something I do have mixed feelings about. Yes, it helps preserve the large oak trees, which is good, but it really opens it up and allows the invasive honeysuckle to just take over. But here we have the first chanterelles of the season. These are Cantharellus phasmatus, the ghost chanterelles. You can tell that by the white stem that they have below that yellow cap. And once again, we're looking around the large oak trees. Chanterelles are vase or trumpet shaped, and they have the false gills, the shallow ridges underneath the cap. That's a key identifying feature. So we're just running along that ridge. There's a stream down below there, and as the large oaks along that ridge are pushing up some chanterelles. They are, of course, mycorrhizal fungi. They associate with the root system of those large oak trees. Now, these are russula mushrooms. They have that crumbly, brittle stem that they're known for. This particular variety has a real acrid, nasty smell to it. Here we can see there has been some high water flushing through this area recently. And now in all my chanterelle videos, I give this warning about Amanita flaviconia. You'll notice it does not have that vase or trumpet shape. Instead, it's more of an umbrella shape, a typical cap and stem. You can see there's a ring around the stem, and there's true paper-thin gills, not those shallow ridges, but deep, paper-thin, true gills on this mushroom. That's a key identifying feature. So this is Amanita flaviconia, most likely quite poisonous. Now, just a few steps away are some chanterelles beginning to come up. So they come up at the same time. They're both yellow. They look similar. Now here we can see more Amanita flaviconia. At the base of the stem, you'll see that bulge in the one that I knocked over. Now this little one, the partial veil has not yet separated from the margin of the cap, so it doesn't have that ring. That the gills are still covered by the partial veil, and that those flecks of material on the top of the cap are remnants of the universal veil that once covered the mushroom when it first emerged. And here we have Latoporus cincinnatus, the white poured chicken of the woods. Usually you see that closer to the stump. Maybe it's underneath that log. But they do emerge from the ground around the stumps of large oak trees. They have the white pore surface rather than a yellow pore surface underneath. That's Latoporus, those overlapping fronds, Latoporus cincinnatus. This is Russula parvovirescens, that green spotted russula, very strange. And here we have Lactarius subplinthogalus, some might say Lactarius subplinthogalus, and you'll see this white latex that exudes from the mushroom when it's damaged, possibly a defense against eating insects that may want to eat the mushroom. Interesting variety there. In the meantime, on the river, we have sort of a cloudy day. It turned out to be a better day for a walleye than it did for smallmouth bass. This walleye here has taken a stone cat imitation, one that's weighted with those little like sculpin helmets. So a fairly heavy fly that working close to the bottom. Decent walleye there. I had several follows from walleye. I had a follow in this little still water pocket behind that outcrop. I couldn't get it from across the river to strike again, so I actually got up on the outcrop. Had a bite, but I knew right away it wasn't a walleye. Uh, so it has tangled in the roots that are sort of twisted around this rocky outcrop. So I'm going to have to get in the kayak, and I mean it's completely got the line wrapped up in those branches. So I'm going to have to get back in the kayak and dig up all that those branches and free the line, and hopefully still have a fish on. So here we go into the boat, grab the rod, pull up all kinds of sticks and twigs and branches and try to untangle that line. A real mess, unbelievable tangle. So, somehow, miraculously, there's still a fish on the line after all that, and as suspected, when it finally comes into view, it is a catfish, and not that big of one, so it just goes to show, especially in comparison to walleye, how good of a fight the catfish do put up, and they can definitely run down into those branches and at the end of the fight, after all that, he spits the fly right at both sides. So he definitely got the last laugh that time. And I did catch a few smallmouth. Uh, the big ones just did not show that day. I had several more follows from walleye, but they just weren't wanting to come up off the bottom and strike the fly. They'd sort of roll up under it and go back down. Sort of typical. That's kind of how it goes with fly fishing for walleye. You're lucky just to get that one. But any day that I get to float the river, run some rapids, cast a fly rod, and even catch a few fish is a pretty awesome day. Compared to any moment of winter, and definitely compared to laying in a hospital bed, staring out the window and wondering if you'll ever be able to do any of this again. Now, previously, we've made the analogy that money in general circulation behaves like water in a river. It flows from poor to rich. It's a current. And the rich, when they accumulate the money, tend to invest or save or retire debt with that money. And so it is removed from general circulation. So money in the economy flowing from poor to rich tends to have a deflationary effect. It's a deflationary current. And yet this current, plus all taxation, is still not enough to offset the government spending, which we can tell by our inflation situation. So would we be in a better position in terms of a general economy if, when these crises such as COVID and so forth come along and people demand that the government do something to make themselves feel better, would it be better for the government, instead of just handing out money into general circulation, to retire debt instead? And technically speaking, this would be transferring debt from private to public. We can, in another video, perhaps go over what the public debt is really the same thing as the money supply. And we can perhaps go over monetized debt and that and so forth in another video. But for now, the question is, would we be in a better position if the government had responded to the crises of the last 30 years or so with a different approach instead of directly inflating the money supply? And it would have to be a targeted sort of debt cancellation. We don't want to reward bad behavior and things that are potentially damaging to the economy. But would we be better to take a different approach and perhaps focus more on retiring debt or transferring it from private to public, as the case may be, rather than just pumping money directly into general circulation? And we could compare that with other potential solutions, such as what if the government implemented a sales tax that would offset the inflation over 5 or 10 years? How does that compare to retiring debt and so forth? Now, I am still working on trying to attach something to the camera body that gives me more of a whistling wind type of sound rather than just a loud mic rumble. And in this particular case, this is pieces of a Scotch-Brite pad glued over a couple of the microphones in a certain way. I won't go into all the details, but it did give me a bit of that whistling sound if the wind was light. But on this particular day with a strong wind, it just was a loud mic rumble. As you can tell, I've filtered the audio way back on this. There really was just no saving any of the audio. So we're still experimenting, still trying to find something that will work. And part of the problem with this particular setup was that I could not isolate my voice from the mic rumble. They were in overlapping frequencies, so it couldn't really tell what I was saying either. Meanwhile, back at the old gravel pit, it's a new day, a very hot and humid day, with almost no wind for relief. There are some smallmouth buffalo working the rocky shoreline. Now, there was a period of higher water where the Raccoon River flowed into this lake, but it did very little to relieve the algae bloom. Now, smallmouth buffalo are a difficult fish to catch, especially on a fly rod. Here you can see I've cast beyond the fish to avoid spooking it, and I'm slowly working the fly into the fish's feeding window, but before I can, the presentation fouls on a rock and the fish turns away, and that's how it goes 90% of the time. But I did get lucky and managed to get an eat from one of them, and the water temperature may have quite a bit to do with this, bearing in mind that fish are cold-blooded creatures. Their metabolism is dependent on the ambient water temperature. And here you can see that fly, sort of a dragonfly nymph. Got a good solid eat from it. And I chose that fly, a rather large fly for this size of fish, but in subdued natural colors, to help them find the fly in this nasty, murky water. So that's a question to consider. Do you use a smaller fly that's more likely to be eaten in perhaps a brighter, less natural color that perhaps could spook the fish? Or do you go with would they even be able to find a smaller fly if it were in more subdued natural colors? Now this fish, I just saw, it was a little further offshore, and I just saw the tail come up, sort of guessed where the head would be, set a cast down there, and let it sink, felt a little tension on the lines at the hook, and there he was. So I got another eat, and again, I think probably the water temperature may have had something to do with the luck I was having. Along the shoreline, anyway, the water was bath water warm. It was really pretty gross. So their metabolism was cranked as high as it could be. But at the same time, of course, the oxygen level is probably quite low. So it's sort of like having your foot on the gas and brake pedal at the same time. It didn't fight normally. As you can see, it didn't make a long, deep run as these fish normally would. It just sort of bulldogged there along the shoreline. But I think I was getting more bites. They were acting a little more aggressive, if aggressive is even the word to apply to these fish, because of the high water temperature. But that low oxygen level prevented them from fighting like the way they normally would. And it's going to take some time for this fish to recover. If it recovers at all in this low oxygen water, we'll see what happens. He can't maintain his equilibrium. Push him out a little deeper and hold him down there. Try to get some of that air burped out of him. There, we got a couple bubbles to come out. And he did eventually kick off.